Welcome back to Close Up. For the first time in more than a decade, the Democrat on the ballot in the 1st Congressional District will not be named Carol Shea Porter. The new nominee is Chris Pappas, and he's our guest this morning. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
So Democrats really trying to claim the high ground these days in terms of the Me Too movement, what's going on in Washington. Of course, recently, Democrats here, one of the biggest fundraisers, you guys had Alec Baldwin as a featured speaker. He notoriously lost a show on MSNBC over some very pointed homophobic comments. Was it your opinion that it was a mistake, perhaps, to bring him here as a featured speaker for a big fundraiser?
Well, I didn't stay for his remarks. I greeted supporters and people that are working hard on this election because there's so much at stake. And I did say in my remarks that deeds and words matter, and that there's no place in the public square for someone to be expressing homophobic, racist, misogynistic views. That goes for people in Hollywood. It goes for the President of the United States. And I think we've got to make sure that we continue to draw lines about what is acceptable behavior. That's partly why I'm running for Congress, to ensure that we can show that we're better than the culture in our country right now. The zero-sum game that exists in Washington, where we need checks and balances. And I'm the only candidate in this race that's going to hold this president to account.
Do you have a plan to reduce or eliminate illegal immigration?
Well, I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. And there's clearly a bipartisan consensus in Congress today for many provisions, including ensuring that we can provide the Dreamers with citizenship. These are kids who came to this country who know no other country than the United States of America. They're here, they're contributing, they should be able to become citizens. So I think we need to jumpstart those conversations about how we can do that, because in the absence of it, we see extreme policies being pushed, like the policy of family separation along our southern border. Look, we need to invest in border security. We can do it without building a big, beautiful wall, as this president wants to do. And I think we can get to immigration reform in a way that supports the values that underpin this country, understand that immigrants built this country, and do it in a way that sees the humanity in one another and also supports our economy over the long term. We benefit in New Hampshire from having a reformed visa process that allows more workers to come into our state, so that should be part of the discussion as well.
Lots of environmental issues out there, but I want to focus on one specific to your district. That would be the contamination at the Coakley landfill. This is something that has already been part of the conversation and even dates back to the 1980s. But do you believe that the Seacoast Pediatric Cancer Cluster that's out there is in any way connected to the landfill?
Well, I think there is evidence that PFCs cause cancer. And it's important that we complete health studies, that we have a full understanding of what the impacts are, so that we can set lower thresholds for the amount that's acceptable in drinking water. We've got to make sure that we provide families with answers, and the families on the Seacoast, the families around Coakley, have waited too long to get those answers. That's why it's important that we continue the work our delegation has done to shed light on this issue and to make sure we get all the information out on the table. Look, this is an emerging contaminant across the state of New Hampshire, including in Merrimack around the St. Gobain Plastics Company. We've seen it in other parts of New England. The more we test, the more we seem to identify that it's there and that it's very present in other parts of our state. So the health information is critically important. We've got to have an EPA that's doing their job and is really focused on getting the information out there for people.
Democrats want to repeal the Trump tax cuts. In your opinion, where should that threshold be at which a person or household would pay more tax instead of seeing their taxes remain the same or go down?
Well, we're not seeing fiscal responsibility in Washington right now, because we saw a Republican majority pass a tax cut without any deliberative process on a permanent basis for big corporations, and they gave huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. And at a time where our economy is growing, we shouldn't be creating more fiscal instability for our government, because we heard what the result is. Just last week, Mitch McConnell said we need to start talking about reforming Social Security and Medicare. We've got to protect those programs, and I'll absolutely do that, and not use them as a way, as cuts as a way to give a permanent tax break to people who don't need it. So I think we've got to focus any tax relief on working and middle-class people, on Main Street businesses, not those at the higher end of the income spectrum who don't need a tax cut and aren't going to make the type of investments in workers that are going to create more economic opportunity.
Do you believe the budget deficit, the federal budget deficit, matters? Is that something that you would want to prioritize?
I believe it does matter, and I believe we need to get our fiscal house in order. You wouldn't run your business or your state government like Washington does its business, so we've got to create a more stable process. You know, we lurched from one manufactured fiscal crisis to the next. They've used immigrants and children's health insurance as political bargaining chips. That's just wrong. So they need to get back to regular budgeting. They need to employ the pay-as-you-go principle so that when there's a good idea, we find a way to pay for it along the way. I think if you set up those frameworks, it's going to allow us to be able to focus on how we make sure that we achieve some savings and bring down these sky-high deficits that are now going to hit $1 trillion a year in 2019. You know, we're going to be spending more on interest on the debt than we will on defense. We're going to be spending more on interest than we will on the Medicaid program. That's unsustainable for us as a country, and these huge tax breaks to those at the top haven't helped. They've made it a lot worse.
A lot of focus on the Supreme Court in Washington of late. Would you support legislation that would increase the number of Supreme Court justices?
I wouldn't support that. You know, President Roosevelt proposed that famously back in the 1930s, and I don't think it's the right move for us today. I think we've got to make sure we restore confidence in the institutions of this country. I'm very concerned with the direction of the court, because I believe that the rights of women, of the LGBT community, of immigrants, of workers, hang in the balance with future decisions. And it's important to have an advocate representing this district that's going to work to mitigate any decisions that go against what's best for the people of the state. I'll do that to stand up and protect basic rights. My opponent won't.
So specifically, let's say in the future that the court invalidates or nullifies Roe v. Wade, what would Congress, in your opinion, do in some way to try to protect abortion rights? Well,
certainly we need to see action at the state level to make sure that New Hampshire is a place where women can access the full range of reproductive health care choices. In addition to that, there's been legislation proposed on a regular basis to try to put up additional roadblocks, waiting periods for women to access care, and I think that's just wrong. So we've got to continue to fight against those efforts at the federal level. I think we also need to invest in family planning services. You know, this administration is trying to dismantle the Title X program, which has gotten our abortion rate to a record low over the past 30 years, in part because we've increased the availability of contraception and basic care. Those types of investments pay dividends, and I would like to see us make sure that they're available at Planned Parenthood and other providers around our state.
Your opponent, Eddie Edwards, criticizes you as being part of the resistance. Is that accurate? Are you part of the resistance?
Well, I think there are important times to stand up and be counted. And this is one point in our history where it is important to stand up and be counted and speak truth to power. I think there are a number of ways where this administration has been taking this country in a dangerous direction. You know, when I see kids being put in cages along our southern border, it's important to speak up. When I see this administration want to drill for oil off the coast of New Hampshire, it's important to stand up and be counted. And when they're in court trying to take away protections from individuals with pre-existing conditions, it's important to stand up and push back. So I think we need a member of Congress who's willing to work across the aisle to get things done, who's willing to work with anyone when it's in the best interest of the people of this district, but who will also stand up to this administration when they're wrong. And I'm the only candidate who's capable and willing to do that.
If Democrats retake the House on Capitol Hill, there's likely going to be some focus on trying to curb mass shootings, something having to do with gun control. Is there an example of a gun control proposal or piece of legislation that you believe goes too far?
I think that it's important to have the conversation about how we can respect the rights of individuals here in New Hampshire to hunt, to collect, to defend their homes, while also taking steps to make sure that we keep our communities safe. I think we should start with universal background checks because there is broad support for that. And I believe we can achieve that. Look, my opponent said he wants to repeal the federal background check law. I think we've got to plug the holes that exist in it and make sure that dangerous weapons aren't falling into the wrong hands. But I don't believe we should be taking away people's weapons. I think we need to look for common sense ways to make sure that, you know, all gun sales go through a background check and that we ban dangerous devices like bump stocks.
Okay, Chris Pappas, we thank you for your time here today, and we'll see you at the Granite State Debates.
Thanks very much.